Hello, and welcome to the Fall Beaverton Voters Forum. My name is Ellen Russell, and I'm the chair for the Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement. Before I introduce you to Eric Schmidt, our moderator, I'd like to thank you for watching. This is not a small thing you are doing right now, giving us your attention for 2+ hours. You're making a choice to be an informed voter. You're doing your part to engage with your neighbors, and small actions like these are what makes our city such an amazing place to live. I know that if we were able, we'd be in an auditorium, standing room only, and there would be applause for each candidate's speech. Instead, I applaud you, viewer, and send you the heartfelt thanks of the Committee for Community Involvement and the entire city of Beaverton. 2020 has been a divisive year, both literally and figuratively. But the people of Beaverton know we have more that brings us together than tries to come between us. Happy viewing, and please make sure to vote.
Thank you, Ellen, and good evening, Beaverton. Welcome to the Beaverton Voters Forum for the November 3rd, 2020 general election. As Ellen mentioned, tonight's forum is sponsored by the Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement, BCCI, and the City of Beaverton. BCCI is an advisory committee to the Beaverton City Council. In addition, BCCI sponsors educational activities designed to promote public participation in Beaverton city government. And since its inception, way back in the last century, BCCI has been active in public involvement policies, especially land use issues. We would like to thank our co-sponsors for this event tonight: the Beaverton Area Chamber of Commerce, the Beaverton Downtown Association, the City of Beaverton's Diversity Advisory Board, the League of Women Voters, Washington County, and the Washington County Public Affairs Forum. Several of those organizations provided us with some of the questions that we will be asking the candidates tonight. For the first time in the history of doing this event, this year our audience has been virtual, both spring and fall. Questions, however, were submitted by email, and due to time constraints, we're limited on how many questions we can ask. However, I would like to add that we had over 100 questions submitted for tonight's Voters Forum. Yes, many of those questions were identical or similar in content, which indicates that many of us are facing similar issues, but many of the questions were unique. As the moderator, it is my job to edit which questions get asked, but I sincerely appreciate the help I received from my fellow Beavertonians. Now, if your question is not asked, and I know I'll hear from you if it is not asked because I've heard from you before, I tried to ask as many questions as I possibly could. However, if I didn't get to it, we encourage you to contact the candidates after the forum and ask them your question. Their contact information is located at beavertonoregon.gov/votersforum. And due to our strict time constraints this evening, I will stop a candidate when the allotted time limit for a statement or answer is exhausted. Those are the ground rules. Let's get started. I'd like to introduce the two candidates for the Washington County Board of Commissioners District 1 open seat, Nafisa Fye and Jeff Hindley. The candidates have 2 minutes to provide us with an opening statement telling us about themselves and why they are running. BCCI members did a drawing to determine who would go first, and Ms. Fye, you have the honor.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. My name is Nafisa Fye, and I'm running to be the next Washington County Commissioner for District 1. Our current Commissioner, Dick Scouten, is retiring, and he has endorsed me to represent our district, as well as having the support and the endorsement of the majority of the current Washington County Commissioners, including Washington County Chair Catherine Harrington. And as your county commissioner, I will fight for improving the health and the safety of our communities, tackle the affordable housing crisis, and address the root causes of poverty so that every working person in Washington County can succeed. I have the necessary experience to have tremendous impact for our district, and not only our district, but our county entirely. I've worked for the American Red Cross for nearly a decade. I also worked in local county government as a public health professional. I have 2 pandemic management experience, the MERS outbreak in 2013, and COVID-19 contact tracing management countywide. I'm also a small business owner, and I have strong track record of helping other small businesses increase their revenues and creating platforms that facilitate success and for small business owners. In terms of community, besides being a community organizer, I have been representing our district on the Clean Water Advisory Commission. I am ready to be your next Washington County Commissioner, and I promise you I will be a transparent and accessible commissioner. I completely understand what's like to be left behind for resources and programs, and I will not do that. Please vote for me, vote for Nafisa, vote for representation, a new perspective. Nafisa Fai, thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Fye. Mr. Hindley, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks, Eric. I'm glad to be here. I'm honored everybody's out there watching who is ready to cast a vote in what's a very important election for our county. I'm a longtime Beaverton resident. I grew up here, moved here when I was 5. I've gone to Vos Elementary, Highland Park Middle School, graduated from Beaverton High School, raised my family, and lived here most of my life. I've called Washington County my home. I care about it deeply, and I've been pretty connected to this community for decades. I right now sit on the Homeless Plan Advisory Committee for the county, the Rural Roads Maintenance Advisory Committee. I'm member of the Washington County Public Affairs Forum, and these experiences have really helped inform me and prepare me for this position in the county that I want to keep going in a great direction. When I walked into county government years ago, working with at-risk youth, I didn't really realize that what I was going to be doing was going to inform the rest of my public service career. I used to teach classes on Martin Luther King in detention facility to youth, and we'd read through the I Have a Dream speech, we'd answer some questions, and I'd always ask this question: do you think you're capable of rising to the level of this person and do something great in your life? Most of the time they answered no. I felt that very sad. I spent most of my professional career working to help kids change their thinking, to motivate and inspire them, and I came to realize that many years later that as a future public servant, it's the same way working with adults, the same way as being a policymaker. The idea is that government just doesn't have to give everything to everybody. It's not our role, but we need to eliminate barriers and create opportunities for prosperity for everybody to attain what they want in their community. We have limited resources and limited responsibilities as a county government, but those are things at the minimum we should be doing, and it's really what propels me, it's what motivates me, it's what excites me. I have no ego investment in this position or any desire for power. It is really to serve and then to leave and move on and leave Washington County better than when I found it and let somebody else step in and take over when I'm finished. So I'm confident you'll see that that's accurate and that you'll vote for me, Jeff Hindley, for your next county commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Hindley. We appreciate it. And now the fun portion of the evening, questions and answers. Most of the questions came from our citizens, our residents of Beaverton, and from the Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement and a few of our co-sponsors. The first question is a combination of the submitted questions, and it goes to Mr. Hindley for the first answer. 1 minute, please. 1 minute answers. What have we learned from the coronavirus about public health, and how will you apply those lessons to your time as a county commissioner?
Well, I think what we learned was that everybody was ill prepared for something of such a large scale, and I don't think that mistake is going to be made again. The county and the state are responsible for initial pandemic response. We already have a lot of public health experts at the county level who have MDs, PhDs, an extra name that we pay to advise the county on public policy regarding public health. And I'm confident that there's been a lot of lessons learned, and that expertise is already kind of mitigating the effect on Washington County. We're faring far better than some of the other larger counties. So we're getting closer to phase 2. I just spoke to our HHS director this week, and we've now met 4 out of the 6 benchmarks. And so I think, as a county that had the first case, we have really bridged that gap and moved past everybody else, and we're getting closer to the next phase. So I think a lot of wisdom has been had with our current experts at the county, and I expect that to continue, and the county should provide whatever they need to prepare for a future response.
Thank you. Ms. Fye, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Eric. I think if we learned anything from this pandemic, I would say is that we need leadership that we can trust, and we need leadership that knows what they're doing, that have the experience in dealing with outbreaks, that can roll up their sleeves and get the county back on track. It's a critical job, that should not be taken lightly, with a huge responsibility. And I believe that I'm that candidate that really brings two pandemic experiences to the table, as well as working in a county local government as a public health professional. So we really need leaders that other leaders are also excited about. And I am that leader. I have, so many support throughout Washington County, throughout our tri-county regions, as well as statewide. And we need people who can bring hope and really get our county back on track. We are dealing with not only an economic crisis, but a public health crisis, and we need that experience.
Thank you. The next question comes from the Highland NAC, and it goes to Ms. Fye first. Do you plan to fully cooperate with the county auditor in all respects and fund that office fully, even if you disagree with their findings?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we need strong accountability mechanisms in place, and we need to track our metrics, and we need to make sure that we're spending taxpayers responsibly. I think it's I will be able to work with that office and also make sure that we are holding each other accountable and that they have the necessary resources to do their job well. So I definitely will look forward to learning more about some of their deficits are, what resources they need, and what audits that they plan to prioritize, and see what support I can provide, because I'm really strong on accountability and spending taxpayers' money wisely.
Mr. Henley, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Eric. I got it. Yeah, I'm a big supporter of our auditor. He does a fantastic job. What my 21 years of government experience has taught me is there's a lot of waste in government, and I don't like waste. I'm fiscally very much on the cheap side. I think our current county commission has been spending well out of bounds of what we're bringing in, and it's not sustainable. We can do more right now with what we have. We need to be asking questions like, where can we cut? Where can we hold back? Where can we streamline our budgets better to pay for some of the proposals? I haven't put forth anything that can't be payable with some simple economics with the budget without asking for extra taxes and fees. I don't like government waste. That's one of the things that really, frankly, irritates me. I'm a strong proponent of keeping and protecting people's money as well as businesses' money that pay a lot of taxes in our county. And so our auditor should be given full reign to do his job properly, and that department to do their job properly, and I would support them in anything that they need.
Thank you. The next question came into the city's website, and it goes to you, Mr. Henley. There are large swaths of urban unincorporated lands adjoining the city of Beaverton's boundaries, especially south of Highway 26 and west of the Portland city boundary, which are challenging for police to serve and where residents are demanding higher levels of urban services. Do you support annexation for those areas? Why or why not?
Well, annexation is a complicated issue. It should always go to the voters about whether they want to do that or not. Typically, cities have the power to annex property. However, what's happened over the last kind of 10 years or so, or a little bit longer, is that I think county or city governments have understood that it's not popular amongst a lot of people, and that a lot of people would prefer to stay unincorporated while others prefer to be corporated. So typically governments will go in and they will do a lot of work over a couple of years to see where people, want to do on that issue. And I think that the public should be able to speak to that in those areas. There are some groups that want to stay unincorporated and others that want to be. And if the majority of people are wanting to go a particular direction, I would be hard pressed to go against that philosophically, because I believe in that voters really know what's best for them. My job as a county commissioner is to continue to provide the best services possible for the folks that want to stay in the urban unincorporated area.
Thank you. Ms. Fye.
This is a conversation that came up during my endorsement process with the mayors not only in Beaverton but as well as Hillsborough mayors, and I think it's a bigger conversation, and I think goes to people being left out of political conversations and making decisions of what impacts them. So it really needs to be something that the residents in that area needs to decide. And if we do annex any area or any portions of Washington County to whether Hillsborough or Beaverton, I really think then, does the city have enough adequate resources to really take care of those folks that are being added to the city? And if we don't, then how do we, as a county commissioner, what is our role to really take care? I live in Aloha, and we feel like we're the stepchild because our roads, we have a lot of.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sorry about the time constraints. This next question is a submitted question, and it goes to you, Ms. Fye. How will you represent Beaverton's interests on the Board of County Commissioners? And what would be a couple of examples of the interests that you would represent?
Absolutely. Well, first, I would like to build and continue to build relationships with the city councilors and some of the programs the city provides, and also some of the community organizations that work in Beaverton to really understand some of the challenges the Beaverton folks feel or face. And some of the issues I like to work and partner with is really definitely affordable housing, and how do we address the root cause of poverty, and as well as alleviating congestion. My district faces a lot of traffic congestions, and I want to make sure everybody is spending less time on the roads and more time with their loved ones. And how do we do that is through partnership and collaborations. So I tend to really focus on those two areas, as well as, how do we collaborate together as a county, making sure Washington County is safe and inclusive and a prosperous place. So that conversation definitely needs to be broader.
Thank you. Mr. Henley.
Yeah, two things. Right now, Beaverton leads Washington County with the number of homeless youth under age 18. And that's a problem for me because, one, I care a lot about youth. I've worked with kids my whole life. And I also am very near and dear to the homeless issue. Having a brother-in-law who lives with us who's homeless and chronically mentally ill, it's been something that's been a struggle for him and us to help him navigate that. So those two things combined have me kind of like wanting to really partner with Beaverton to tackle that problem a little bit better. They've got some great organizations that do that. I think we can do a little bit more to help Beaverton cope with that difficult problem. The other issue from a policy perspective is there's not really good communication right now between land use and transportation between Beaverton and the county who's responsible for roads, and Beaverton who's doing a lot of work in especially South Cooper Mountain area. We really need to work to have a better development and transportation plans that are a little bit more unison, that are providing the needs of the citizens there. And most of the people that I've talked to in those areas, that's not happening. So we need to improve that.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question comes from the Highland NAC, and it goes to you, Mr. Henley. Do you support the county's equity office and programs that have been enacted recently? And do you have more ideas for diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great idea. I'm glad it was developed. I'm kind of a data guy and a research guy, and so we really need to get a better handle on where the county, not only as an employer, but the county in general, and I'm talking all the way up through private enterprise, if and where we have problems with bias, racism in those areas, cultures that are not being addressed. We need to know where those are, what the effect is, who's responsible. You can't solve that problem and reduce those barriers unless you understand the information. And I think that's one of the primary goals of our first director of that department. And she's going to be bringing on about 4 new employees that are going to be getting a lot of data, bringing that to the county commissioners. And our job is to act on that and make sure that we're going to be a bias-free county. We want that on every level. And I think that was a step in the right direction. We're going to find out what the parameters of that department and that job is, but I think that it was a great idea. Great step.
Thank you. Ms. Fye.
Yes, I absolutely support Um, and in terms of how I would continue to support as a county commissioner, I think diversity and equity is one of the most diverse county in Oregon, and this is a county that was founded in the early 1800s. And so people are really needing a change and new perspectives. So I'm really glad the county took the steps. But I think that in terms of having one director or one chief officer and a four staff, I really think that we can add more resources to that program and to that department so that we really address everyone in every issue that impacts in our county. I really think that we can beef up that program and that department and add more resources so that we can really take care of our residents holistically.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Next question goes to you, Ms. Fye. A combination of submitted questions, by the way. Do you support the county's, how do we address climate change in Washington County? What kind of local action should we be taking now? And what are your ideas on addressing this global issue locally?
Great question. I think, I think we need to, I really think that this is a statewide issue that the state needs to really step up and take a moral action on climate change and really give the resources necessary and the power needed for local government to enact and to protect. And if we learn anything from the wildfires, is that we need to really act on climate change. We need to do something about climate right now. And I think that unless the state does something, I think the local government's hands are really tied. But there are creative ways, and I think the community have really innovative ideas on what we can do at the local level. But I really think to be successful, we need to have a statewide policy that addresses climate change and gives the resources needed for us.
Thank you. Wish we had more time. Mr. Henley, the question goes to you for a minute answer.
Yeah, not too complicated of a question for 60 seconds, so I'll kind of take my stab at it as well. Yeah, it's a much larger context. I would agree with that. Local level is difficult on how to address that. I think that the county has done some things regarding that we do have some authority over, such as the Green Streets Initiative. All of our new developments have to provide and function under that kind of like setup and design. The money we put into working with our transportation systems to have more people kind of biking and walking for those people wanting to do that. I think we should work a little bit more with TriMet for some of our flexible bus routes as they are trying to move their fleet to a more of a green fleet rather than away from their diesel fleet. It's one of the things in the transportation bond, which even though I don't support it individually, I do support TriMet moving to that area. And as we talk to them about improving routes in our community to better serve our citizens, I hope that we can partner with them, even financially, maybe in some ways, to help them bridge that gap. And at least when it comes to our own transportation system here, providing some green buses for our citizens.
Thank you. Next question goes to you, Mr. Henley, and it is a combination of submitted questions as well. Do you think the destruction and loss of farmland in Washington County is worth it to build data centers and low employment facilities? How would you approach the loss of some of the most productive agricultural land in the world for big boxes?
Yeah, one of the things that makes Washington County unique is this kind of agriculture and urban divide, which I'm a big fan of. Tens of millions of dollars in farming every year. It's very important to our economy and to a lot of jobs, frankly. I'm pro-development, but I'm pro-smart development. And right now, the county's going through a significant natural resources revamp because of a court hearing, along with Metro, who's partnering with us to make sure that any new development we do meets certain criteria that protects our natural resources. However, we also have to, right now, about 94% of our population lives on a very small part of our urban area. 80% of our land is outside of the urban core. So we have room to expand, but I do support the fact that we need to expand intelligently and protect our natural resources as we're building, because it is connected to congestion. Affordable housing prices are connected to this kind of tightness that we have. So I think we can make smart, prudent decisions about protecting our resources while we have some level of expansion, which I think we need.
Thank you. Ms. Fye, question goes to you.
Yeah, can you repeat that, please?
You bet. Do you think the destruction and loss of farmland in Washington County is worth it to build data centers and low employment facilities? How would you approach the loss of some of the most productive agricultural land in the world for big boxes?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say no, I don't support that. And I think, I really believe that we need to be smart in how we use our land supplies and really be protective of our urban growth boundaries and really protect our natural resources. I think I'm willing to be part of the conversation to see how do we exhaust available lands before we tap into urban growth boundaries or any of that. So I'm really big on protecting as a public health professional, as an environmentalist. So I really am for making sure that we smartly plan for any development and we exhaust our available lands before we tap into that. And as the question says, low jobs, and was that really necessary? I would say no. And I think that when we have lived experiences, when we can have some of these stopped.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next question goes to you, Ms. Fye, and it is a submitted question from the Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement. Most of the meetings of the Board of Commissioners are held during the daytime, making it impossible for those of us with inflexible day jobs to participate. What will you do to help make government more accessible for real people to be able to participate?
Great question, and thank you for whoever submitted that. I really think, that's, I'm a mom, and I think it took a long time as somebody who had to learn English to participate in civic engagement. So we really need to make our civic engagement accessible to everyone, and not that to say one size fits all, but we really need to diversify how we reach our residents and how we engage. And some of that suggestions could come from the residents and the citizens themselves. So what I plan to do is really have forums to try to get the residents how they want to engage the commissioners and what are some ideas, and really make it fun and engaging and participatory to get everyone to submit in a suggestion, just like this forum, how the questions were submitted, and pick one and pilot it.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Henley, question goes to you.
Yeah, the county commission schedule has been kind of a pet peeve of mine, to be frank with you. And one of the thoughts that I've had, it's a small improvement, but a good improvement, is they at least you'd move every other week to an evening appointment to let more people be involved. I wouldn't really have a problem with evening appointments in general for county commission meetings, but I think that would be an easy step in the right direction to get more people involved. The other thought I had was that, one thing I've heard from a lot of people in the last 13 months is they never see their county commissioner. He's been absent, doesn't go to CPO meetings and Neighbors Association meetings. Beaverton has about 13 of them. They just feel left out of the system because their own commissioner in their district is not around. One of the things I've wanted to do, and I would be absolutely available to do and have done through the election process, is regularly be attending CPO meetings and neighborhood association meetings so people are constantly seeing their representative. You can provide ideas, pitch ideas, explain things going on, and also listen. And I think that kind of regular involvement would be fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question goes to you, Mr. Henley. There is a measure on the Washington County ballot this election that would establish a commission on compensation. That commission would determine the salaries of county commissioners, among others. Do you support that measure? If you don't, why not?
I do support the measure, and I'll be really quick about it. It's complicated, and I'd be happy to tell people individual if they want to know, but I do support it for a bunch of reasons. Right now, The only way to get into politics and to do this job for the second biggest county with $1 billion plus budget is you have to be wealthy, you have to be retired, or already be a politician, or have a business that somebody can run for you. It precludes a lot of people from being involved in the office, and so I do support that. I work with compensation committees in my own county, and they're fair and just, and I trust that they'll come up with something that's equitable. You can be a lot more accessible as a commissioner if you're around all the time. And that's what I would want to be. So that's one reason why I support that. However, I would challenge Catherine Harrington and other members of the board, if they want to get full-time paid politicians, to put the money where their mouth is and put forth the voters a term limit measure to the county voters to change the charter and put term limits on elected officials in Washington County. It's something I would hold myself to, and I think it's a good addendum to that if it passes.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fye.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I support this. And I think it's, it goes back to, being one of the most diverse counties in Oregon. And it's really hard to serve your population well and address equity, address service underutilization, and be innovative and creative and be with the time. Not to mention responding to pandemic and economic crisis. And to do that, to do your job well, I think you need to be a full-time and to be really representing successfully your district and your county. I really do think it takes a full-time job to do this work. And I'm glad the commission were creative and thoughtful in thinking about how do we really serve our people in Washington County, and how do we do our job well. So, good job.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's time now for the candidates to ask their opponent a question, and their opponent will have 1 minute to answer that 30-second question, and we'll have timers for both. Ms. Fye, you get to ask the first 30-second question of Mr. Hindley.
Jeffrey, I'm always asking you your question. My question to you is that I noticed that you said you have a plan to increase housing affordability, but without increasing system development charges and taxes and fees. I was just wondering, curious a little bit, how do you plan to do that?
Yeah, really quickly, let's just take a small pilot project, for example, 150 home development. Right now, our SDC charges for, if they were eliminated completely, would be about $5 to $6 million. The property itself could be donated. Right now, we donate to nonprofits. One of the things I'd be doing is getting a hold of our assessment and taxation folks and finding out where we have property we can donate, and build homes of about the $250,000 to $325,000 range, which most of the builders I talked to, they absolutely could do if the land was cheaper and SDCs were eliminated. Now, it's not for all developments, but it's basically like incrementally doing this every single fiscal year as we move through our process. It's doable. Moderate income people can afford that kind of house, and developers are willing to build it. And I can find that money to save quite easily with my experience in county government.
Thank you for that. Time for your question, your 30-second question for Ms. Fye.
So, yeah, Nafisa, mostly just kind of a personal question, just because my brain's always thinking about the future. But what would you see happening, and what would you be pursuing if you lost the election? What would you be doing next? What would your next steps be?
That's a great question. I don't know. I probably hunker down and try to figure out how I can grow my business and continue to be a community organizer. I hope to continue to help out the Pan-African Festival to see, and really continue to be impactful for vulnerable populations and public health and really see that. I don't plan on intending to lose this election. I think the residents in Washington County are ready for a new perspective. They're ready for a new change, and they're ready to add public health to the commission. So I'm really excited, the support and the community mobilizing that happened through my campaign, and hopefully, so win or lose is never guaranteed, but I hope to do that to contribute to be a good person.
Thank you. Thank you. Someday someone will invent a voters forum where we can have open-ended answers, and a lot of them, but that day is yet to come. Time now for the closing remarks. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and by the luck of the draw, Mr. Henley, you get to go first.
You know, I'm pretty honored through this process to get some endorsements of some of our great leaders.
We need you to unmute your mic, Jeff.
I am
Your mic
unmuted.
seems to be muted.
No, I hear him fine. I hear you, Jeff.
I didn't touch anything.
Oh dear. Do we have a problem, fellas? Hang on.
Restart.
Everything's looking green on my end, at least. I can't hear me, but I can.
Can we hear you, Ms. Fi?
I hear Jeff fine, and
Must
I
be
hear
me
you,
then.
Eric.
So should I continue? Am I good to go? Yeah. Hey, at least
Probably
we didn't have
wait, because they took the timer. They took the timer down, so probably wait.
Yeah, so I was going to say that, you know, we both have endorsements from great leaders. I'm honored to have endorsements from the mayor Sherwood, city councilors in Tiger, Tualatin, Sherwood, Roy Rogers, Jerry Willie, some of our most respected leaders in the county commission. But that doesn't have any matter of who's going to be a better leader, who's going to be a better advocate. I got an email probably about a few weeks before the May primary, and I got confronted by a lady who titled herself as a progressive Democrat. He wanted to know what my positions are on a bunch of things, and we talked back and forth, and she ended up saying she was going to vote for me. But one thing she said is, do you agree with having charging stations in the county, new developments? And I said, well, I've never thought of that before. I'll do some research and I'll get back to you. So I did. And I did a lot of research and learned more about charging stations than anybody would probably care to know about. I got back to her and I told her that based on the fiscal nature of it, it's very cheap. Impact on developers would be minimal, but it would be another example of how we can reduce barriers to provide something for people in the county that needed it. I'd be open to that for our CDC to implement that in new developments. And it's a small thing, but it kind of represents, I think, a little bit of how I operate. I really like the engagement with people. I'm open-minded. I think through things really well. And my job, if I'm elected, is not just for my district, but to represent 600,000 people in Washington County. And I think that attitude will propel me forward. And I'm really interested in, meeting with any groups, any folks, and listening to areas that they struggle. And I'm pretty engaged with trying to figure out how to problem solve that. And that's what people are going to get out of me at the very minimum. So I look forward to bringing that to the Washington County Commission.
I appreciate it, and I apologize for the technical problem on my end. Apparently, it was my earbuds, so here we go. Ms. Fi, your closing statement, please.
Okay. Thank you to the Beaverton Committee for community involvement. And thanks to you, Eric, for moderating this forum. 2020 has been certainly has been a year for the books, and a devastating one. And in so many levels. Thanks to I would say there's too much at stake in this moment to be seeking to divide our communities. We need to make sure the county is serving everyone, regardless of their backgrounds or the language they speak. Look at the work we're doing right now on COVID-19. Some of our immigrant communities and communities of color have been hit the hardest by this disease. But we know that this virus does not care what language you speak or what your race is. So the reality is that if we're not protecting everyone, then everyone is at risk. I'm incredibly honored to have the support of so many amazing individuals and groups in this campaign. I'm honored to have the endorsement of all of our labor union organizations, the Washington County Democrats, OLCV, the Beaverton Education Association, and the Tualatin Valley Firefighters. I'm also honored to have the realtors, the support of the realtors, the Home Builders Association, and the Community Tenants Alliance, the Beaverton Chamber of Commerce, and so many others, and as well as our Governor Kate Brown endorsement and support, as well as our own Washington County. Washington County Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamiti. I look forward to earning your vote, and I hope you would vote for me. I'll be a great commissioner for our district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And you both are hired to be the moderator of the next Voters Forum for your work tonight. Thank you. Nafisa Fai and Jeff Hindley, thank you for joining us. Good luck to both of you. And thank you again for what you're doing.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay, next up, we are going to hear from the candidates for the new City Council seat in Beaverton, position number 6, which was created by the recently approved city charter. We have 3 candidates who have filed for that position: Nadia Hassan, Douglas Jones, and Pat Wolcott. Before tonight's Voters Forum, Lanny Parr in the city's neighborhood office and senior producer Roberto Gonzalez at TVC TV contacted each of these candidates to ensure they are able to connect to the technology used in this event. Ms. Hassan and Mr. Wolcott were contacted and participated in the technical checks. Despite repeated attempts, staff was not able to contact Mr. Jones. The following email from Douglas Jones was received last night shortly before 11 o'clock. And I'm quoting now. From Douglas Jones, douglasjonesministries@gmail.com, date October 13th, 2020 at 10:32 p.m. Eastern Pacific Daylight Time, to Roberto at TVC TV and L. Parr at beavertonoregon.gov, with a CC to Francisca Rose at beavertonoregon.gov. Subject, Douglas Jones, position 6 candidate. And again, I'm quoting. Dear Roberto and Lanny, please don't take this personally, but I have reconsidered participating in this event. I believe that COVID lockdown is the height of medical tyranny. Doing virtual anything is not how real Americans do politics. The fact that there is a producer and a control room lends itself to fraud and manipulation, even if you have the integrity of the Pope and call it live. Sorry if I have wasted your time. Thank you for the opportunity. Douglas Jones. Ergo, Mr. Jones will not be appearing tonight. We offered him the opportunity to state his case to this forum, and he declined. So let's introduce you to the 2 candidates who are still here and still with us. We are going to be talking to Nadia Hassan and Pat Wolcott, and by virtue of the draw that BCCI held earlier, Nadia Hassan has 2 minutes for her opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Beaverton. Sorry, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Oh, so sorry about that. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Eric, and the Beaverton Committee for Community Involvement for putting on this forum. My name is Nadia Hassan. I'm the mother of 3 young children, daughter to immigrant parents, a former public school teacher, and an HR professional. Beaverton needs leaders. We need to bring fresh perspectives and ideas to the table. That is why I'm running to be your next city councilor. From grassroots to grass tops, I've worked with Fortune 500 companies like Fred Meyer and Nike. I've also taught here in Beaverton at our very own schools. I believe the combination of my private and public sector experiences will be instrumental in building a better Beaverton. It was my experiences as a high school teacher that inspired me to run. I saw firsthand how our systems do not serve every student or family. It was the students battling home instability, students who translated for their parents, students who tried to fill out their FAFSA but did not know how, families who wanted so much for their future but could not always navigate how to do that. We must do more, and we can. We can improve the livability for all of our communities in Beaverton by collaborating with regional partners like Washington County, THPRD, Metro, and state legislators. We can create a better Beaverton. I'm honored to have endorsements from elected officials from each of these groups, along with the Washington County Democrats and unions like SEIU and the Beaverton Education Association. I'm dedicated to ensuring that every single individual has access, awareness, and understanding of the resources available to them so they can not just survive, but thrive in Beaverton. To do this, I'm committed to ensuring we have affordable housing, accessible transportation, and a plan to provide economic stability and prosperity for our communities and small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Wolcott, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Wolcott, and I am a candidate for seat number 6 on the City Council. For those of you that don't know me, I am a retired law enforcement officer of 42 years. I've worked both in the civilian sector and the military. I've been a director of public safety, having worked all of the positions from beat cop all the way up to the big desk, so to speak. I'm committed, having worked on the NACs, both in the Central and South Beaverton Neighborhood Advisory Council, as well as BCCI for 2 years. I'm committed to making sure that Beaverton continues to be the great town that we have. We didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to retain this spot by just sitting on our laurels and all that. I got involved because I wanted to see a little bit more infrastructure development in our neighborhoods, because I'm seeing some things that disturb me about our neighborhoods. We need more safe walking paths, sidewalks for our kids and to go to the park. And we need to repair some of these that have become pinnacles because of past problems with root binding and all that. We can do a lot, and I want you to know that very cost effective, and I feel the need that we should do great things continually. And this is my statement.
Thank you for your statement. You have the opportunity to answer the first question first, and it comes from the Highland Knack, one of your favorite places. What tools are you interested in using to reduce displacement from economic forces such as gentrification on diverse and low-income residents? A 1-minute answer, please.
You know, one of the things that our governor did, she basically stated that there's a home emergency shelter for people. I think that we could start a conversation with the state to develop what I call shelter homes. It's basically a low-income house that is about 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, comes with a carport for 2 or a garage, and we can, get some folks into these homes for about $250 to $310, a more acceptable price range. Gentrification, it's kind of difficult to talk about that because that's a big dog problem that can't be decided in a minute.
And your minute is up. Ms. Hassan, your answer, please.
Yeah, could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. From the Highland Knack, what tools are you interested in using to reduce displacement from economic forces such as gentrification on diverse and low-income residents?
Thank you. I want to just start off and say that the Beaverton School District actually has one of the highest number of homeless students, and so really being thoughtful about that. So thank you for that question. I think first off, we need to make sure that we're partnering with all the right organizations. We have nonprofit organizations today that are providing support to our that are providing support to these communities. I think we also need to make sure that when we're talking to our state legislators and that we're sitting at the table with Metro and Washington County, that any dollar that needs to be allocated towards housing is being allocated towards supporting these families. In addition to that, I think we need to really talk about what mental health supports we are offering. Right now, Oregon ranks very low in terms of mental health services that we provide to our citizens. If we can work towards better job stability, better mental supports, we will be able to address this problem.
Thank you for that. This next question goes to you, Ms. Hassan, and it is again from the Highland NAC. How will you advance gender, racial, social, financial equity for the city's residents to deliver results for citizens instead of corporations?
That's a great question, and probably one of the main reasons that I'm running. I felt that my voice as a teacher, as a working parent, as a woman of color was not at the table. And I looked around me and felt like we needed more of those voices. And so as I've found my voice in this process, I've thought of other voices that I want to bring to the table. And so when I think of racial equity, I think of how are we ensuring that every voice is in the room, and what are we doing to bring that voice into the room? And so a couple ideas that I have is, in addition to listening sessions, which we often hold, I think we need to start going out to our communities and actually engaging them. And so if that means, holding up office hours in a complex, then we hold office hours in a complex and we talk to people. I think we have really gotten disconnected from the residents that live here. And the only way to better connect with them is to go where they are and talk with them and connect with them and hear their concerns and hear their voices and do everything we can to make sure that we're serving them.
Thank you. Mr. Wolcott.
We have a very viable NAC system. 13 community organized organizations that can reach out. One of the things that I think we need to do is to encourage those NACs to have several, maybe twice a year, community events, like when we did a movie in the park down here in South Beaverton. I kind of brought all the stakeholders from the city together, where community folks from just out of their homes would come to see a movie, and yet while everybody was waiting for it to get dark, they would talk to city folks. And that would, I think, include that. It's going to have to be a community-based solution involving neighborhood communication. The city will be involved.
Thank you for that. This next question goes to you, Mr. Wolcott, and it is a submitted question, came in online through the city's website. Are you in favor of defunding or abolishing the Beaverton Police Department? If so, why? If not, why not?
I am not a proponent for defunding or farming out our law enforcement capability to, like, Washington County Sheriff's Department. We're a community that's going to be, I'm sure, well over 100,000. We should be policing our own. I believe in the philosophy that if you police a community, you should live in that community. And when you're retired, you should leave that community, because they're still going to come back and ask you a bunch of things, and you don't have a stake in that. There's a action of, since the beginning of time in this country, to throw things at the police when you want something done. We need to stop that. Basically, we need to just get back to basic law enforcement. And I look forward to hearing the chief's review on use of force policy, which she's already engaged in.
Thank you. Ms. Hassan, your answer, please.
Yeah, I think that a lot of our communities are talking about what transparency and accountability looks like. And as my opponent mentioned, there's also conversations around, there's also conversations around what police are being asked to do. They're getting the phone calls for mental health support. They're getting the phone calls for de-escalation. And so I think we need to have a conversation where we bring our communities of color to the table, we bring our police to the table, and we bring city government to the table and talk about what and how we can set up community policing in a way that every single person feels safe.
Thank you for your answer. This next question goes to you, Ms. Hassan, and it is a submitted question. How do you feel about the transportation options available in Beaverton? Are there enough options? If not, what ideas do you have to provide more options?
Thank you for that question. And I know one of the big things that I'd really like to see is some more safe routes to schools. I know many schools that live in high traffic areas, and ensuring that our students can get to and from school is very important to me. I'm also a very big fan of our bike lanes, and I'd like to see as much as we can do to continue to encourage bike lanes and also multiple modes of transportation. There is a measure in front of Metro that's coming out in front of voters right now as well, and I will push and advocate to ensuring as many dollars that can be used towards transportation will come to Beaverton to start looking at how we can alleviate congestion and look at some of our traffic issues in Beaverton. So I'm really committed to ensuring that we continue to have those conversations with the focus on safe routes to schools and bike paths.
Thank you for your answer. Mr. Wolcott.
We've got everything from light rail to bus lines to walking paths, bicycle paths, and taxi service. I think we've got it all covered. There's some discussion that maybe we ought to have a light rail that goes down here or there, but I think that's kind of cost prohibitive when you really look at it. One of the things I think I would like to see is more of a cost sharing, because some of the folks that could use it can't afford to use it, even though it's $5 or $2.50. When you look at what a bus pass costs, it's an awful lot sometimes for people on fixed incomes. So I'd like to look in as to how we could subsidize that a little bit more, even if it's just paying a subsidized taxi fare for some folks to get to a medical appointment.
Thank you for that. This next question, Mr. Wolcott, goes to you, and it is a submitted question. As we implement statewide alternative housing options for existing single-family homes, what should Beaverton require in the design of new housing developments or major neighborhood revisions?
That's a really good question. Right now, that's pretty much set by the state, all those requirements. And I think we need to get back to the state and start looking at curtailing a lot of those requirements that are mandatory for building suitable and livable homes. Not to say that we don't want good insulation or heaters or things like that. It's just we've priced ourselves into the roof. So to speak, and has made it unaffordable with our governors stating, "Hey, we're in a housing crisis emergency." She has certain powers that we can do. We can curtail that and make what I call shelter homes that would meet the deal. And I've discussed those a little bit earlier.
Thank you for that. Ms. Hassan, your answer, please.
Eric, could you please repeat the question?
Sure. It's a submitted question. As we implement statewide alternative housing options for existing single-family homes, what should Beaverton require in the design of new housing developments or major neighborhood revisions?
Thank you for the question. So I think one of the foundation of why I'm running is ensuring that we have more voice at the table. And so before we talk about requiring anything, I think it's really important that we encourage community engagement and that we hear from our communities, and not necessarily the communities who are always showing up to the meetings, but communities that we haven't heard from. And so sitting down with our neighborhood associations or our NACs, sitting down with our communities of color, sitting down with everyone and trying to understand what does housing look like. Another angle that I would add is that single single family homes don't necessarily meet the pricing requirements for some of our families that live on fixed income. So looking at what can we do, what diversification of housing can we have to ensure that every single person has a home that they can live in. But at the foundation of this is really talking to our community members and understanding what they're looking for, talking to our small businesses, understanding what works for them so that we can all reach a common solution.
Thank you for that. This next question goes to you, Ms. Fye, right off the shot. Submitted question. What is your vision for how Beaverton should address climate change? What policies would you support in order to ensure Beaverton and its residents are doing our part to safeguard our futures?
Thank you for that question. And we know that climate change is very much an issue. We saw that last month as fires ravaged through Oregon. And so it's very much on my mind that I want to be able to step out and breathe the air. And so I think at the city level, we need to take a look at what policies we can and can't implement and work towards implementing those policies. There's also been conversations about creating a climate action committee. And I strongly believe that we need to get some climate activists really helping us make informed decisions. We also need to continue to lobby at the state and federal level because this is not just a Beaverton problem. This is not just an Oregon problem. This is a worldwide problem. So we really need to come together and talk about what climate change looks like and how we can continue to address this within the city, within the region, within the state, and across the world as well.
Thank you for that. Mr. Wolcott, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
What is your vision for how Beaverton should address climate change? What policies would you support in order to ensure Beaverton and its residents are doing our part to safeguard our futures?
Well, the city of Beaverton already has a very good climate plan in place and is, I think, working towards that very effectively. The other thing I would think here that we need to address is really an educational program. What really is going to affect us is the NO2 that comes out of just a car sitting there waiting for the light to change. Those levels, we need to do a educational program to basically advise people as to how we best can do that. Reduce those levels. The other thing that I think we can do is stress usage of alternative vehicles like electric and use our bicycles and 2 feet. I think those work well.
Thank you very much for that. Next question goes to you, Mr. Wolcott, and it is a submitted question. Do you think our downtown area is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
We have some challenges in our downtown area. Mostly those challenges have been enhanced because of the problem with COVID-19 in the response. I'm seeing a lot more open storefronts that I would like to see. I'd like to hear from the folks, but to be right honest with you, we got to get through the virus, I think, to see what businesses can come back quickly and what we as a community form of government can do to spur growth and interest to come back into the business world by some of those businesses that have basically walked away.
Thank you for your answer. Ms. Hassan, it is your turn to provide us with an answer.
Eric, could you repeat the question, please?
Do you think our downtown area is healthy and successful? If not, what would you do to change that?
I do believe our downtown area is healthy and successful. I love what has been happening in the city. I actually, the other day, got to dine in the First Street Commons, which is an outdoor area that was created due to COVID, and I was really excited to be a part of that and to be able to support our local businesses by eating out there. And I really love the work that we've done with our food trucks. I think some of the work that's being done around building affordable housing is really great as well. I do think that as we are going through COVID, we are seeing changes in what we're seeing in downtown in the city of Beaverton, and we need to continue to make sure that we are supporting our residents, whether it's mental health support, whether it's counseling, whether it's making sure that they have affordable housing, whether it's battling food insecurity, which right now is very much a thing. People are choosing between rent and food. And so just ensuring that we are supporting our communities. One thing I've seen in the city of Beaverton is how our community has come together. We are feeding people, we are supporting people, and we are helping people. And I hope we continue to do that.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. The next question goes to you, Ms. Hassan, and it comes from the Diversity Advisory Board, which is a co-sponsor of tonight's event. If you are elected to the City Council, and if you had the choice to be the liaison for 4 boards and commissions, what would they be and why?
Ooh, that's a fun question. Well, given that the question came from the Diversity Advisory Board, I'd probably have to pick the Diversity Advisory Board. I really believe in the work that they're doing. I got to go to the Beaverton virtual night market a couple weeks ago, and that was just an amazing opportunity. I really enjoy participating in the events that they've had. I think another committee that's been doing some very interesting work is the Human Rights Advisory Commission. It's been really exciting to see some of the work that they're doing. There's also the Committee on Aging, and please don't quote me on the exact committee, but it kind of talks about how we can work with our seniors and our elderly population. And then last but not least, I think the Planning Commission is an important group to also be participating with as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wolcott, your top
Could you
choices.
repeat the question, please?
Sure. From the Diversity Advisory Board, if you are elected to City Council and if you had the choice to be the liaison for 4 boards and commissions, what would they be and why?
I would like to be over the neighborhood NACs or advisories because I'd like to drive more city involvement into those areas and to make sure that the community's voice is repeated. Economic development, also city diversity and cultural arts is I'd like to be involved with.
You've got
And
30
is why I think I can assist those becoming more involved with the community. Pretty simple.
Okie doke. Next question goes to you, Mr. Wolcott, and it is a submitted question. What are your top priorities to successfully see through in your first term if you are elected?
I'd like to make sure that we have good overview of the risk, use of force and risk policy for the city with our police department. I think the city council should have a good understanding of what's going on over there. Not to say that it hasn't been done or that that's lacking now, but I think that as given this current situation, I think it behooves the city council to be involved with that. I would like to see some infrastructure improvements in the neighborhoods, and that be given a little bit more priority. In my mind, if we were able to have, with no fiscal constraints, some updates to our sidewalk status, to making good, safe walking paths for our kids and our population.
Thank you for that. Ms. Hassan, your answer, please.
Yeah, so really at the foundation of what I want to ensure that we're doing is that we are not leaving communities behind, right? Which people are we leaving behind, especially given the pandemic? So ensuring different people feel like they have a voice at the table and that they can be seen and heard. So finding ways to make city council meetings accessible to everybody, finding ways to ensuring that if the neighborhood association committees are having a meeting, that people have the ability to get to those meetings and that they feel like they can be a part of those meetings. I think think affordable housing is going to be really big. We really need to sit down and have some really honest conversations about how we're going to continue to address the homeless issue, which we know, given COVID, is only going to get worse. And so that's a very big priority of mine, along with the economic recovery. We know small businesses are hurting. We know communities are hurting. Beaverton is an amazing, beautiful, diverse, and vibrant city, and we need to continue to ensure that we commit to making it stay that way.
Thank you for that. And we have come to that portion of our event tonight where you get to ask each other a 30-second question and you get to answer it in 1 minute. And for the draw, we went first to Ms. Hassan. Your question, please, for Mr. Wolcott.
Thank you. I would love to know a little bit more about some tangible ways that you would like to commit to hearing the voices of communities who have been historically left out of conversations in the city.
Oh, that's easy. Just engage them. Just talk with them. Make sure that they're available and that I'm available. One of the things that I do now, prior to COVID, is I would put a little sign up in like a coffee shop and say, I'm the neighborhood NAC chair. Ask me a question. And I get a lot of questions from the neighborhoods on that. When I with BCCI, I would do that in different Starbucks throughout the town, as well as other coffee shops. And be amazed how many times I would have a really good, meaningful conversation. And always I would ask them, are you involved in your NAC? Do you know who your NAC is? And sometimes I would help them get there. I think by doing the same thing and making sure that everybody knows I'm a city councilman, they would probably stop and ask me a question, and we would engage in that.
Thank you for that. Your 30-second question for Ms. Hassan. Mr. Wolcott.
Yeah, got it. What happens? What's your plan after the race, and if you're not successful in achieving it? What's next?
Yeah, I mean, I think what got me here was my advocacy for our communities. And so knowing that we have students and families who are being left behind, continuing to advocate for those people. So we had started a group known as the Beaverton Families for Equity. We really focus on ensuring that a lot of our communities are getting the support and the help they need. So just continuing to advocate, whether it's at the school district level, whether it's at the city level, whether it's at the state level. I'm currently talking with different folks about how we can support students who are dealing with the pandemic right now. So my kids are sitting in Zoom school, earlier today, and how are we supporting our families that are juggling their children and their work and their livelihoods? And so continuing to advocate for what that looks like. Do we find ways to work with different partners within the government to ensure that our children and their mental health does not suffer because of everything that's going on? So just continuing that advocacy.
Thank you for that. Thank you both for your answers to these questions tonight. And now it is time for our closing statements. Each candidate will get 2 minutes to make the case, and we will begin with you, Mr. Wolcott. 2 minutes, please.
As you can probably tell, I get right to the meat of issues, and I may not take up all my time because I want to stay factual and engaged in that. I believe Beaverton is a great place. We have a great cultural jewel in the build right now, and we're going to see a lot of great things with that once it comes online. We have several new construction projects going on for low-income housing, but I think we could do better with that. I would really like to see some things that I call shelter homes to be built. A reasonably priced 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-carport, or a garage be built. There's a lot of residential property that's just vacant, and we can be able to build on those if we reach out to some of those folks and get a reasonably priced, maybe even a donation of that land. so that we can build those things. There's a lot of things that Beaverton can do, and we can achieve an awful lot of positive business flow, both in our business districts and in our residential areas. I hope that you all vote. I spent an awful lot of time in the military and standing on the wall, looking out, making sure that you have that ability to vote. So please vote. Thank you very much for this time and this opportunity to meet everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Wolcott. We appreciate it. Thank you. Ms. Hassan, my apologies to you for misidentifying you at one portion of this program, so bear with it. I'm an old man and sometimes that happens. But it's time now for your closing statement. You have 2 minutes to make your case.
Thank you. Thank you, Beaverton, for joining us in this virtual format. I hope soon that we can actually all be together and sit with one another and have these conversations. Congressman Bonamici, the Beaverton School District School Board members, THP PRD Board of Directors, and leaders within the city of Beaverton have endorsed me. And as you imagine what the future of Beaverton looks like, I want you to know that I'm committed to bringing all voices to the table and working with you so that we can create a Beaverton that we can all call home. I'm running because I love Beaverton and have been proud to call Beaverton home for a long time, graduating high school from Westview High School and raising my kids here. I'm a working mom navigating the pandemic and know too well the realities that working families face and the need to have our voices heard in City Hall. Our voices include seniors like my elderly parents, single professionals like my former students living and working in Beaverton, small business owners, and working families, all of whom are struggling to manage bills, childcare, and school. If elected, I will listen and learn from you in my calls with voters. I hear your concerns about the economy, the traffic issues, housing, childcare, and education, along with many other things. It is my favorite part talking to voters when I make those phone calls. And if you feel that you still have questions or concerns about my candidacy, you can contact me directly through my website at nadiaforbeaverton.com. Thank you again for taking the time to listen, and please make sure you vote all the way down the ballot.
Thank you, Nadia Hassan, for your closing statement. Thank you, Patrick Wolcott, for your closing statement. Thank you both for your participation in tonight's Beaverton Voters Forum. BCCI thanks you. You have a grateful committee in front of you. And so now it's time for me. Thank you. Time for me to give you a little bit of a public service announcement. Great news. The County Elections Office has partnered with WCCLS to enable libraries throughout Washington County to serve as ballot drop sites in some fashion. Both Washington County Elections and WCCLS have created websites with more information on ballot drop sites and their locations and details. Be sure to check them for the latest information for the sites around Beaverton and then use them. Ballot sites are very important. Okay, next up, we have the candidates for Beaverton Mayor. They are City Councilor Lacey Beatty. She is challenging the incumbent mayor, Denny Doyle, for this position. And I hope you're both there. We're going to begin with our opening statements, 2 minutes each. And by the luck of the draw, Councilor Beatty, you get to go first.
Thank you. Are we ready?
We're ready.
I don't
Anytime
see the timer, so.
It'll be up as soon as you start talking.
Perfect. When I was a young kid in the Iraq War, I sat crammed around a tiny TV, watching the results of the Bush-Kerry election, hoping for a better future and a different outcome. I knew in that moment that I would never be a political spectator again. That's why I ran for council 6 years ago and been putting my energy behind some amazing work, like advocating for the successful regional housing bond and passing the largest investment in sidewalks in 20 years in one of Beaverton's most diverse neighborhoods. However, the city is not working for everyone. Our housing and transportation challenges are real, and we need to have a deeper community discussion about community safety. We need to start looking 20 years, not just the next 4. That was all before COVID shut down our schools and our economy. I sprang into action and got an eviction moratorium passed. when I realized other elected officials were not getting the same information. So together with another local official, we coordinated weekly calls for local, state, and regional and federal leaders. I did this because it's what elected leaders should be doing in a time of crisis, and it was something the current mayor was not. Denny now says he has a problem with our inclusive approach we took, but I believe then and still today, in a time of crisis, it's important to bring elected leaders across jurisdictions together. And that's why we reached out in writing to over 140 Washington County leaders. Look, I believe that leadership is not a title, it's influence, and influence must be activated for the good of the people. I know we can accomplish more when we work together. Then George Floyd was murdered. As a veteran, I watched in shock as I saw federally sponsored troops wearing the same uniform I wore in combat, gassing and snatching people off the streets. Like you, I took to the streets. I marched with students in Beaverton demanding that Black Lives Matter and ensured that their learning environments are safe. That's why I led Beaverton to be a sanctuary city in 2016 and passed a Black and Brown Lives Matter in 2018. And this year, I took a hard look at the role of police in our schools. Conversations that have been delayed or blocked. No longer can people wait for the status quo to shift their favor. I'm fighting for a better Beaverton. That's why I'm running for mayor.
Thank you for that. Mayor Doyle, 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Eric. Thank you to all the city staff and our volunteers, as well as the professional crews for making this forum possible. I know it's a lot of work, and I really appreciate it. When I decided to run for a final term, there were a few specific issue areas and project I was committed to seeing through to the end. Now, as I run, I feel a renewed dedication to ensuring this great city we love sees a resilient recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. In that recovery, I am most concerned about three groups that have been hit the hardest. The first is renters. The governor extended a statewide moratorium through the end of the year. We've more than $1 million in rent and utility assistance, but we need to do more to ensure that when rent comes due, rent will be paid, keeping people housed and keeping the mortgage holders solid. Second is communities of color in our city. Beaverton prides itself on being a diverse community, but we know there is much more we need to do as we strive towards racial equality. And as we recover from this pandemic, we must prioritize racial equity at every step, inside City Hall and outside. The third is our local small businesses and the people who own them and work at them. I'm hearing about business closures in other cities, and I know that this is something we cannot have. People have worked too hard to establish their life's work, and we need to help them. A dedication to our community members and a commitment to getting through COVID-19 is why I would be honored to have your vote to ensure Beaverton can have a resilient recovery. Thank you all very much.
And thank you both for your opening statements. We go now to our questions and answers. And the first question goes to you, Mayor Doyle. It comes from the Highland Knack. Will you be bringing up the 8 Can't Wait reform package for a vote of council if you are elected November 3rd? And how will you vote on that package if it is brought up?
Well, it's a great question. It's on everybody's mind. The police department has been following the 8 Can't Wait, and we basically meet all the targets, all the things in it. And I feel confident that council is there. Council is taking a nice, slow approach to do this. Let the police department respond, talk about what they don't do. And basically, they're there with 8 Can't Wait. And if council wants to bring it up, we'll see that as soon as they want to do that. But a policy has been set by the police department all over these years. And I'm very happy with what the police do. The only couple of things that they have exceptions to is when there is a life-threatening situation, then things can happen. Other than that, and they're following state law.
Thank you for that. Your answer, Councilor Beatty.
I mean, we don't have to wait till November to answer that. I introduced 8 Can't Wait over 3 months ago because it's a meaningful first step into addressing public safety. And I think the police department should not be setting policy. Policy is set by elected officials. And so for me, this is easy. Of course, I'd want it passed. I've introduced it. It's been challenging to get conversations brought up on this topic. And I believe that, in our neighborhoods here in Beaverton, police officers should not be shooting at moving vehicles. As a combat veteran, I've shot out of a moving vehicle. I don't want that happening in our own neighborhood. To me, it's not about winning this election. It's about getting this done for our community.
Thank you for that. The next question is a submitted question, came in through the city's website, and it goes to you, Councilor Beatty. Are you in favor of defunding or abolishing the Beaverton Police Department? If not, why not? If so, why?
Well, I wish that we would have used the term asking ourselves, do we have the right people doing the right work? And I think if we look at it through that lens and not the vernacular defund the police, because that's challenging and people have their backs up against the wall. But if we ask ourselves, are the right people doing the right work? The answer is no. I mean, the police officers are doing really important things, and we've asked them to be everyone's everything for a long time. Someone that spent my career in public health, I know what it takes to make sure mental health is addressed in our community, and our police officers aren't the right people to be doing that kind of work. So I think if we look at it through that lens, we're going to have a much more meaningful conversation versus defunding, because I think people get they just get their backs up against the wall when they hear this. But if we ask the question, and I think if you just broke it down into pieces and said, are these the right skilled people doing the right work? That's where we need to start in this conversation.
Thank you. Mayor Doyle?
Yes, I certainly concur with the observations we just heard. We need to take some of the job away from the police department, police officers that they're currently being asked to do. And for years they've been asked to do. Same thing with the fire department. Mental health issues and physical health issues is something that we need to put in place like they've done down in Eugene. I think that program where 911 to send people with social work background is an excellent program. I'm very happy Senator Wyden has introduced a funding mechanism at the federal level. I asked our chief of police early this summer to really research what Eugene is doing, and now she is talking with other police officers and leaders in the county to see what will it take to get our 911 system switched. So again, we need to reposition how we spend our money. I work at the Illinois Department of Mental Health, and the lack of mental health assistance from the state is really difficult, and we need to change that. And that was one of the priorities I made for the Oregon League of Cities when I was president of that league.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Next question goes to you, Mayor Doyle, and it comes from the Mayor's Youth Advisory Board, MIAB, one of our co-sponsors tonight. Okay. Is there anything the mayor can do at the city level about health care for low-income families?
Well, that's not a traditional role for cities. That's something that counties do. But what we can do is go seek funding to help the agencies that are there to provide these services. There's quite a number of nonprofits that we fund through our social service funding that actually help people with this situation. And we need to find more ways to develop funding to give to these groups so to let them provide the services they're very good at. And again, between the county and the state and our local nonprofits, I think we can make that happen. And we will continue to do that.
Thank you for that. Councilor Beatty?
I've done the hard work in public health my entire career. I expanded school-based health center access to students where over 80,000 students now have access where they spend the majority of their day. I did that not by thinking about what we couldn't do in that role, but bringing people together to fund projects like building Beaverton School-Based Health Center. It was a multi-jurisdictional project to fund it, to build it, to open it, to operate it. And the city does contribute to their mobile dental plan through a variety of sources in the city. But I think what the pandemic has taught us most is that it's no longer about, can and can't we do. We know that healthcare is a right. It's not being addressed in our community, and it's something we need to do better moving forward.
Thank you for that. Our next question is for you, Councilor Beatty, and it comes from the Downtown Beaverton Association, one of our co-sponsors tonight. Very happy to have them. And I'm quoting now, Beaverton is in a very exciting time of rapid growth and development. Unfortunately, part of this carries the risk of losing longtime tenants and businesses due to rising costs. What steps will you take to ensure the city remains culturally and economically diverse without facing the terrible consequences of gentrification?
Well, one of the things that I pushed in 2 budget cycles ago was to increase the funding for storefront improvement programs. This helps local small businesses work on the outside exterior of their building to be more welcoming. I'm Greek. One of my favorite places in the city to eat is a place called UR Mediterranean down on Watson. But the building is set back. It's hard to get to, but through storefront improvement grants, the building looks a lot different now. And so I think we have to take that one step at a time to make sure. I also visit a lot with our downtown Beaverton business owners to understand their unique needs, what they need to do. And I think this is something really important because as we build and grow and our shift has changed to wanting mostly restaurants in that area, we need to expand to make sure that we have stuff that accompany restaurants for people to do intermittently. And I think we need to create a destination beyond just restaurants because what's going to motivate you to leave one place and go into another shop? We can do that by creating better sidewalks, by having good maps. There's a lot of things to do.
Thank you very much. Mayor Doyle?
Yeah. And as mentioned, the Storefront Improvement Program was put into place and requested of council and the budget committee by staff of the city. And it's been marvelously successful. We have more than a dozen new restaurants just in one area of the city in what we call O-Town. Another thing we're doing is making sure that people have an outdoor spot to dine at these days. And then come wintertime, we're going to put up covers and some heaters. Hopefully we'll keep people in business there. We can't afford to lose the investment the city has made, and all the business owners there have made tremendous investments in their business. And I'm really proud of what has happened. So we need to continue to make sure as we let people redevelop, we protect and we don't gentrify. And that can be done in a number of ways. And it's something we're very aware of. Staff is very aware of this. And we're really proud of all the businesses and how they've come around and how they seem to be moving through this crisis time. And let's hope we have a mild winter so that people can enjoy some outdoor dining until we get into phase 2.
Amen to that. Next question comes from the Diversity Advisory Board, one of our co-sponsors tonight. It goes to you, Mayor Doyle. How will you address the inequities in housing? What do you propose is the solution to the financial need of community members once the eviction moratorium has ended?
It's a great question. We need to find funding, be it some more federal dollars or state dollars, to make sure, as I said in my opening statement, that we can make sure rent is paid so people don't have to be forced out. I think that's really critical. Another thing we're trying to do is build more affordable housing. We've got the Marianne going right next door to the Old Town area. We have other projects being put in place around the city. We need to make sure that those happen. We need to make sure that they are really affordable, 1, 2, and 3, 4 bedroom units for people that are at 30 and 50 and 80% of the median income. So I think those are the things we need to do. And finding money takes work at the federal level, and we continue to do that. And that is a solution that we have to come up with. And that's not just Beaverton; it's all cities that are facing the same challenge to make sure rents get paid.
Your response, Councilor Beatty?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because, when we passed the eviction moratorium, we knew eventually this was going to happen. And I think we could have done a little bit more with the CARES Act money. We received $2.77 million. We could have put more of that money into the pot to make sure that we were going forward. Yes, there's a lot of areas in the budget that we could have pulled money together to make sure, because housing is a basic human right. And we need to make sure before we're investing in everything else that we make sure people are housed and safe. And we did that immediately when the pandemic first started, but we need to have a better system in place for people to be able to get that money. I hear all the time, people are calling the numbers, asking for help. It's a long wait. It's really hard to get. We need to make sure that money frees a little bit easier so community members can actually access it. And beyond that, what we need to do is really look upstream and talk about home ownership as a way to make sure that we can help people create generational wealth so this doesn't happen to them again in the future.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. The next question is a submitted question, and it goes to Councilor Beatty. With the increasing number of homeless youth in Beaverton, what programs should we be promoting right now to provide them the best support and chance of a successful transition to adulthood?
This is a topic that I have mounds of expertise in. I took the lone dissenting voice on making sure that when we passed that you couldn't sleep in your car in our community, we have the highest rate of teen homelessness in the state. I've spent almost a decade on Home Plate Youth Services Board of Directors. They're Washington County's only nonprofit serving youth and housing instability. I sat in the basement of City Hall to get Family Promise off the ground. And I can tell you as a board member from Home Plate, one of the best things we need to do is create housing. I think it'd be a really awesome project for us to partner with Metro with some of this money to create dorm-style buildings, not just for homeless students in Beaverton, but students attending Portland Community College. I think if we could co-locate those two groups together in a building that was accessible, easy, cheap, and a dorm style, we can solve a lot of issues with very little investment from the city.
Thank you. Mayor Doyle.
Yes, it's a really good question. Obviously, this has been a situation we've known about for probably 12 years, 13 years. The fact that the Beaverton School District reports the highest number of homeless students. We've been trying to make that happen when we try to help nonprofits that can reach out to provide counseling. Home Plate's a great example, as mentioned. I was invited to an event out in Hillsborough when they were moving a location, and I asked if they would consider coming to Beaverton and see what we can do. And the city has really helped them be successful. There's more we can do. And all the students that we have are just trying to survive, eat, and a lot of them want to go to school. We started a program with some churches where families took in a student for a year, and that has grown real well. It's been quietly done for, 6 or 7 years, and that is being done across the coast right now. And those are the kinds of, with counseling and help, we can help students succeed.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next question is a submitted question, and it goes to you, Mayor Doyle. Do you see single-family homes as a continued option for lower middle-class families in Beaverton?
I think that if we expect that to happen, we have to find a way to bring the cost of those units down, those homes. I think the state just passed some regulations where duplexes, triplexes, and quads can be built in R1 stuff. That the rules around that are being formulated and finalized by DLCD, and we'll have to follow that. That may provide an answer to provide more affordable housing, but again, we have to step up and reduce the costs. It's hard to reduce the cost of land because land, we don't control that. It's hard to reduce the cost of construction because we don't control that. But in terms of fees charged to get a home built or get a project done, those are things we have control of, and we need to take a look at that as a way to bring the cost of living down. As said earlier, home ownership is critical, and we need to make sure that happens. We've got some agencies in Beaverton that are actually doing that right now.
Thank you for that. Councilor Beatty.
Well, I would say, no, it's not a way. The housing prices are out of control. And so I really looked at building affordable housing as a toolkit model because we really need to solve issues as they come forward, which is why I worked to help get 4 women elected to Tualatin Hills Park and Rec, who tonight voted to contribute $5.5 million of SDC waivers to building affordable housing within our city. They represented 33% of the cost that we charge to build. And so we can systematically go after these fees and lower them to make building affordable homes in our city. But it takes work, and it takes people saying, it's not just my problem, and it's not just developers. And developers are able to do basically kind of whatever they want within the city when they fund city councilors and mayor's races. I think what we need to do is really look at how do we get every single one of these fees lowered. And it's no laughing matter that THPRD just contributed that much money.
Thank you. Thank you for that. This next question is actually several questions that were submitted, and we combined them. What options for improving the increased through traffic in Beaverton neighborhoods exist? What are your plans to deal with Beaverton traffic? It can take sometimes 30 minutes just to get across town. So frustrating. We go to Councilor Beatty for that question.
Yeah, I would say that this is the number one thing when we do our annual survey that people complain about is traffic and sitting in there. And we spend a disproportionately small percentage of our budget on transportation and infrastructure upgrades. And so what we need to do is really look through our budget and spend more money in that area. Of course, it's partnerships with the county and ODOT, and building a road is not cheap and it costs a lot more than it used to, but we need to prioritize it as a city councilor budget. And we can work towards getting some people off the road. What the pandemic has showed us is that people can work from home remotely. And so how do we encourage some people to work from home? How do we work to get better last mile busing within our city? It is not accessible to the average person to use TriMet. We need to make sure it's getting deep into our neighborhoods. It's the only way to alleviate a lot of our traffic concerns is getting people off the roads.
Mayor Doyle.
Yes, I think, as pointed out, we need to partner closely with the county and with the state, because if you look at the major thoroughfares in Beaverton throughout the downtown area and other spots, they are actually under the stewardship of the county or of the state. So we need to come up with projects that'll help traffic move better and also take advantage of what just was said. People are learning to work and not commute. That's really important that we make that a possible option for as many businesses as we can. And that is a way to get cars off the road. The city, if the council and the budget committee want to prioritize road solutions, they're expensive, but we can do that. So if we need to take a hard look, and now's the perfect time because we've seen the results of what happens when people are not out on the roads. Traffic is moving much better. And in terms of reports from the police, things are not as congested. So I think we can take advantage of that and perhaps make that an ongoing process.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Next question goes to you, and it is a submitted question. COVID has been a challenge for small businesses, from keeping payroll going and not laying off staff and adjusting to phase one restrictions. Every day feels like it is a moving mountains to keep doors open. What will you do as mayor to make our jobs, small businesses' jobs, easier navigating these obstacles?
Well, it's a very timely question. I think we'll have to continue to do more of what we're doing now. We've taken money from our general fund. We've taken money from the federal government, and we are supporting businesses. The first round of funding, we had about a 70% rate was small businesses owned by minority or women. And we need to make sure we continue to do that because this is the backbone of our community. And we found additional money through the CARES Act. We found some additional money through the county. And again, we need to get the federal dollars back here. We send a lot of money to DC. We need to have it come back here so we can do it. And our staff has done a great job. And I've heard that from people throughout the city of getting funding in place in a fair and equitable way. And I think we need to do more of that. And that's the solution that government should be able to provide, knowing this is a crisis, knowing we have to get through it. We have to get to phase two and get people once again comfortable coming to stores, coming to restaurants. And that's a difficult task.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Beatty?
Yeah, when I talk to small business owners, a lot of their concern is keeping people on payroll for healthcare. And so I think if we can work towards creating, and to the earlier question about creating pathways for people to access healthcare, it takes a lot of pressure off of businesses because it is incredibly important. If you lose your healthcare, you lose a lot of things. And I think just, this week, the owner of a bowling alley reached out to me. They're struggling because they're designated. It's the same with Indoor Goals, that is a recreational facility that should be operating like a gym. So I think there's a lot of businesses in these limbo opportunities that if we're able to use some of our own city staff to connect with them, to figure out some of these challenges, to get open and do business if they could do it safely, using our ability and lobbyists from the city. I mean, Metro was able to do it when they opened the zoo. And so I think a lot of these things are incredibly important for us to look at each individual as the needs that business has versus everyone falls under the same umbrella.
Thank you. Councilor Beatty, this next question goes to you, and it is from the Highland Knack. Do you support the Willamette River water supply project? What do you say to residents who don't want to drink polluted Willamette River water and are concerned about quality?
Yes, I support the project because have redundancy of access to water is incredibly important. And a lot of this pipeline is going to be systematically upgraded so it can operate in the event of a Cascadia subduction. Now, the city's participation in that is much smaller than the other cities around us. So we're not able to push as much as our own like into the project because we're a much smaller piece of it. But when it comes to drinking water, we have a high standard in the city of Beaverton. We know that water will be safe through some kind of regulation, and we continue to test. And so that will be the key, is making sure that we test, we're addressing things. But a lot of what's making water non-drinkable is climate change and algae bloom. And we need to address climate because a lot of these connect right back to that.
Thank you, Councilor Beatty. Mayor Doyle.
Yes, our water department monitors the water very carefully all over, and the communities that are actually using the water from the Willamette are not having any trouble. Read somewhere where there's a pop distribution plant that said some of the best water they see and comes from there. So I safety that we see our engineers and technicians, they're making sure the water is fine. And we definitely need another source of water that can really help the city run. That's why we have about a 5% ownership in this project, because if something happens to our other water supply coming in, then we're in trouble. So this is a great time for us to become redundant. And I think that's really important. And we owe that to the citizens. And in some areas, we owe it to the businesses that rely upon water for what they do. So we are very comfortable with the decision to proceed.
I saved this next question for last, one, because I think it's a great question, and two, it came from BCCI. And the question is, and it goes to you, Mayor Doyle, what neighborhood do you live in, and why do you live there? And what are your favorite places to spend time in Beaverton?
Okay, well, I live in the Sexton Mountain area off of Murray Road near Heighton Elementary, and we're served by South Beaverton Neck. It's a great neighborhood right at the end of the cul-de-sac. There's about 19 acres of woods that the park district has. It's a great place to walk the dog, and even in this time, wear a mask and get the dogs out there. Great places to recreate. And I just enjoy going into the downtown area and watching it change. What has happened in the last 4 or 5 years there has been phenomenal to watch. And you used to not see anybody after 6 o'clock. And it's such a joy to see it on that side, and also what the changes over by the round area. This is exciting, what's happening. So again, we've got solid neighborhoods, and the core of the city is coming alive.
Councilor Beatty, what neighborhood do you live in? Why do you live there? And what's your favorite place to spend time in Beaverton?
Well, if anyone's ever heard me talk, they know I live in central Beaverton. I live off Menlo, the nice new awesome sidewalk that goes from street to street, one of our oldest underserved community members. I bought this house when I ran for city council 6 years ago, when I've walked every single street in Beaverton, over 1,000 miles in my career as a politician. And we walked on this street and I loved it so much. When the house came for sale, we came and bought it as fast as we could because it feeds into Beaverton High School. It's walking distance to the library and the farmers market. And it's just an amazing community, and it's diverse. And, you know, we have neighbors around us that are original homeowners and new families. And it's still a relatively cheap neighborhood, so to speak, where families can buy into it, and is ever changing. And most people also know my husband and I do Spartan races. We do a lot of training in Highland Park because it's basically a forest within our own city. And they have this wild beast area that our kid goes nuts in.
Hey, thank you for that. I'm glad we closed on that note. It is time now for our closing statements. Each of you have 2 minutes to make your case. And Mayor Doyle, we begin with you.
Sure. Well, I want to thank you for having us, and thanks to everyone for being with us tonight. This forum is a bit sentimental to me because win or lose this November, this will be my last candidate forum of my political career. It's always been fun to listen to people, get to know people at the forums. Throughout my career, I've been focused on public service, not politics. That is the tone I bring to my campaign and to my approach to being your mayor. It is not flashy, but it's delivered truly consistent forward progress for Beaverton on so many issues over so many years. In the last decade, Beaverton has seen its first diversity advisory board created, first diversity, equity, and inclusion plan, First Climate Action Plan, first 5-year Housing Action Plan, and first Extreme Weather Shelter come into place, just to name a few things that the staff has been phenomenal at making happen. We absolutely must do more to create more affordable housing, combat racism, and so much more, but our progress is undeniable, and it's fun to look ahead at the challenges. I'm honored to be endorsed by the Union of Local First Responders and Firefighters and SIU, representing City of Beaverton employees and healthcare workers across the state, as well as our local chamber. I'm really proud to be supported by dozens of local elected officials and leaders of color who I've worked alongside to advance racial equity, Think the Bold program, and Beaverton small business owners. I am really committed to running a positive campaign focused on progress and priorities for Beaverton, because that's what Beaverton voters deserve. At the end of the day, to me, it's about public service, not politics. I think that's what makes Beaverton special. It feels like a small town still, and I hope we'll continue to see that happens for the foreseeable future. I hope to earn your vote for my final term, and really appreciate taking your time to listen tonight. I want to say thank you, and please get your ballots in before 8 p.m. on the 3rd. Thank you very much. Good night, Beaverton.
Thank you, Mayor Doyle. Councilor Beatty.
Our housing crisis isn't new, and I've been fighting focus on big developments that do nothing to make Beaverton more affordable for the families that live here. Instead, I focus on real solutions like more affordable housing, more supportive housing, and a focus on seniors living in our community. We know that will actually get people at a place they call home. I passed the largest investment in sidewalks in one of Beaverton's most diverse neighborhoods. I did it to lift our community and members because everyone should be able to choose to walk instead of using a car. Beaverton is right in the middle of the most diverse county and is going to continue to get that way. We need to make sure all are welcome here. That's why we need police reform. The fight for racial justice is long overdue, and we can't pretend these things are not happening in Beaverton. I've been the leading voice on council and engaging community members, and we agree we need to have these hard discussions. Having the conversations are the first step, actions are the next. And that's how we begin to work to ensure that our community members feel like they will get help when they call 911. I want our officers to be seen as helpers by everyone, and I believe our officers want that too. Look, the events of this year have exposed deep problems, holes in the fabric of our society. We need a leader that is willing to take action when we emerge. When I knew kids weren't getting health care, I took action. I increased access to school-based health centers, getting more than 80,000 kids community access where they spend their day. We need to have that same urgency fighting for our planet. Under the mayor, our plan is just a plan. There's no oversight and no one holding the city accountable. As mayor, I will create a community oversight committee with half of the membership being under the age of 30 because it's their future. My work with the community to bring positive change is why 2 sitting Beaverton city councilors, its city council candidate, and the chair of the county commission, along with numerous individuals and organizations, have endorsed me. They did this because I have a clear, unwavering, transparent record of fighting for our communities when others haven't. That's the kind of mayor I'll be.
2 minutes. Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Eric.
I have been texting because I missed a portion of the program that I think we'll probably just have to pass on. And that was where each of you had an opportunity to ask the other a question, but I know you've done that plenty in other forums. So tonight you did a great job. Your closing statements were awesome. I appreciate your answers. I've appreciated the civil tone of your campaign as well. And I thank both of you for your service to the city of Beaverton. Lacey Beatty and Denny Doyle, you've done a great job, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lacey and Denny don't live in D.C.
There you go. And with that, we are going to bring this voters forum mercifully to an end. Thank you all to all of the candidates who shared their perspectives for us. Thank you especially to all of you who submitted a question, and a really big thank you to all of our co-sponsors, the Beaverton Chamber of Commerce, the Beaverton Downtown Association, the Beaverton Diversity Advisory Board, the League of Women Voters of Washington County, and the Washington County Public Affairs Forum. Just a reminder, we have the candidates' contact information on the city's website if you want more of your questions answered at beavertonoregon.gov/votersforum, along with the link to tonight's video and replay schedule on TVC TV. And speaking of TVC TV, thank you guys. You did a great job as always. And my greatest thanks to city staff, Lanny Parr and her crew, for all of the work that they did tonight. It has been a wonderful evening. Please stay safe, stay sane, stay diverse. Good night, Beaverton.